All right, this is Raytheon third quarter 2021 earnings call summary. This is the first time that we have been invested in a company that is also a defense contractor. And so I've had a lot of fun going through this earnings call. As of right now, our website shows that we own zero shares of Raytheon, and that is because we had an option to purchase shares last month. And so that option was exercised, and so now we do own shares of Raytheon, and so that's why we're going through the earnings call. What was really fun for me was going through the new missile that Raytheon has come up with Northern Grumman? I forget how to say it, but Northern Grumman, and it's called what is it called? HWAC, basically, hypersonic missile. And so what this thing does is you launch it from a plane, okay, and it takes off at 5 times the speed of sound, and it actually uses those shock waves to further increase the airflow to burn that rocket fuel, jet fuel, whatever it's using. This thing can be anywhere within the world within an hour, and that is crazy. The other thing that's really cool about this is that this is going to push the boundaries of not only weapons technology, but also aviation, because once you have something like this in practice, now understand that this is being developed. They have flown it, they've tested it, and it works, okay? But it is not actually in it's not in practice. They're not using it. They haven't blown up anything with it. But once this thing is in practice and it is being used, that's then going to cause everyone else to say, okay, well, how do we defend against this, right? And so, how do you knock something out of the sky that's moving at 5 times the speed of sound? I mean, that's crazy. But what's being discussed is using actually space satellites that are going to be armed with lasers that can track basically anything moving in the sky anywhere on Earth, and can target it with a laser and blow it up. I mean, this stuff is really sci-fi and really getting crazy. So anyway, let's go into this earnings call. This was a very dense earnings call. A lot of numbers were thrown around, but honestly, it's not that complicated, right? So as of right now, the commercial aviation is actually up. So things are being moved around in the air, and so they did discuss, again, supply constraints. Everyone is talking about supply constraints, but it does not appear that those supply constraints are coming from packages being delivered by air. It appears that those supply constraints that everyone is talking about is only with ships. I've heard that there aren't drivers to drive the trucks. I don't know how true that is. And a lot of it is coming from the chip suppliers over in Asia. Again, everyone talks about supply constraints. As of right now, it really just looks like an excuse to me. But we'll see how that all shakes out rather, in the next 6 months or so. They did lose on passenger airlines. The passenger airlines are something like 70% of what they were pre-pandemic, and they say that there's a lot of planes that are still on the ground. However, they are seeing more shop visits, and so what that means is that airlines are sending their planes to Raytheon to be worked on, to be repaired, and so they are seeing an uptick in that. But they're definitely not building out any new passenger planes at the moment. The most popular is the 787 from Boeing. Boeing has basically stopped producing that plane, and so all of the suppliers that supply the parts and the engines and stuff like that for that 787 are pretty much, they're out of business. You know what I mean? So Raytheon hasn't shipped anything to Boeing in the past month or so. And so, of course, that's going to take a hit to the bottom line, but they still were able to put up a decent profit number. So that's good. The other thing to talk about is the share repurchases. So far, they've repurchased up to $2 billion. They are planning to repurchase $20 billion going into 2024, 2025. And if you've heard me before, I don't typically like share repurchases, but they did not discuss the dividend at all on this call. Sometimes I really wish I was an analyst to really ask those questions and really push them on some of this stuff, because all they've talked about was share repurchases. They have something like $7 billion sitting in the bank not doing anything, and all they plan on doing with it is share repurchases. Now, the Raytheon did have a merger last year, a couple years ago, where they acquired a big company. And usually, when you have two big companies that merge, the authorities, let's call them, okay, the SEC, the U.S. government, they dictate what businesses you have to get rid of. Okay. Now, Raytheon did not disclose exactly how much they purchased the businesses for and what they sold them for, so we don't know whether or not they're really seeing a profit on these divestitures. But again, they're putting up a profit, so we have to assume that it's not a horrible thing for them. And so this is the company that they've divested just recently, Global Training Solutions, where they were actually teaching persons in, satellite companies and all this kind of stuff, how to use the things that they, in fact, build. And so they've gotten rid of that. They are looking at some other things to divest, but I don't think they have any more requirements of divestiture. I think they're just looking at, what doesn't have a great profit margin. Let's get rid of that. Let's sell that. They did make some acquisitions that I think are kind of dope. Flightaware is one of them. They have a multitude of products that they sell and services that they sell. This is just one of them. But basically, it allows you to track your plane. So if you're an airline, or even if you're just a personal person that maybe you rent jets, right? And so maybe you have like a fleet of 5 jets or something like that, and you rent them out, then this allows you to keep track of those jets anywhere in the world. So it's pretty cool stuff. And then Seeker is the next one that I'm really interested in, because what they do is they build what do you call it? Chipsets. They build control boards for all of these different technologies that go into space. Okay, and so the reason why that's so important is because in space, you have a lot of radiation. There may be temperature that you have to deal with. And so you just can't slap a regular computer board in this thing and send it up into space. And so this company specializes in that technology. And so for Raytheon to pick this up simply means that not only do they have to pay less for some of these parts to put in their equipment, but I'm sure this company also has some R&D as far as inventing new chipsets and new boards that they can then sell to other companies that are in the same business. Raytheon said that they're looking at their synergies to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion by next year. And that simply means that they'll be saving money because of these mergers, right? Because when two companies come together, of course, you minimize your expenses because two companies being one company, you have less expenses, common sense. So they're going to save money that way. The other thing, get back to it. Oh, one. See. Oh yeah, just kind of going through some of the segments. So Collins Aerospace up 7%, so decent, right? The military spending was down, but they did say that the new proposed military budget that hasn't been signed off on yet looks good. It's in line with what they were looking forward to. They did lose $75 million because of Afghanistan, because of course they were supplying equipment and personnel to Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is now done. So that money is just gone, right? So it won't see that anymore. But again, like I said, the military spending they say is going to be consistent, right? It's not going to move too much. And $75 million for a company that puts out billions of dollars a year is really not that big of a deal, but it is something. Pratt and Whitney, as you can see here, that's the engine that's on a lot of the Spirit planes, up 25% year over year, and so that's really good to see. Let's see, the space and intelligence didn't really move very much, but they didn't lose money, and they do currently have a backlog of about 18 billion. And that backlog, I really don't know how consistent that is. I really don't know what that is going to really do for the company, because that backlog could always be backlog, right? I mean, next quarter we can be looking at a backlog of 19 billion, or we can be looking at a backlog of 10 billion, right? There's just really no way of knowing, but that's basically what happens when someone says, hey, I want you to furnish us with this particular engine or this particular part. And then Raytheon says, okay, no problem. Here is the bill, right? But that bill has not been paid, and that bill won't be paid until Raytheon delivers those parts. I can tell you, as someone who's worked in accounting in some of the largest companies in Texas, that sometimes there are questions as to whether or not the person who ordered the parts can and will actually pay those parts, pay for those parts, especially when you're dealing with the government. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to make the parts, have them sitting in inventory, send the bill, and then the bill doesn't get paid. That happens. And so, again, like I said, that backlog fairly large. So it can be a good thing, right? Because that means you got 18 billion just waiting for you when you fulfill the order. But again, that 18 billion can easily be, half of that as far as revenue goes. All right, missiles and defense. We already kind of talked about the new missile that they got going on. They haven't sold any yet. Okay, they just created this thing, but that department is up 7% over the year. So that's really cool. And again, the issue currently is the aviation, right? It was funny, Raytheon actually said, I don't know if it was the CEO or CFO, but they actually said that they were really on board with the mandatory vaccinations, because with the mandatory vaccinations, it means that passenger travel will possibly pick up, right? My thinking on this is that as of right now, passenger personal travel is something of 70% of pre-pandemic numbers. At some point, we will get back to 100%. It's not like humans are going to travel less. That's just not going to happen. At some point, we'll figure out a different way, a different mode of travel. But for right now, planes are it. So at some point, that number is going to get back to 100 and it's going to increase. And then we know that, as I said, the commercial aviation, which is flying packages and stuff like that to and fro, is where it was pre-pandemic. They also talked about international commercial aviation coming back, because it's not quite where it was pre-pandemic. So I see a lot of upside, but there are some things to worry about too in the short term concerning the passenger travel. I mean, we're kind of still in this thing where we know at some point it's going to come back. The question just is when, right? And so I think I talked about this on another earnings call. Valero's earnings call when it comes to gasoline, right? This next couple months is going to be really telling, right? If Americans aren't buying plane tickets to go visit grandma for the holidays, then we can see a really soft fourth quarter. And so, like I said, short term, we may see that the price come down, which is not necessarily a bad thing. As of right now, we have a small position, so definitely want to increase that if we can. Long term, though, I see nothing but upside.